All right. Hello, good evening, everybody. My name's Jack, and I'm here with my excellent friend Daniel.
Howdy.
Um, Howdy, howdy. Welcome back to another week of Talk Openly. And Daniel, I was thinking this week, when did we start doing the show together? Has it been, it's been over a year, right?
Oh my gosh, you know what? I don't think it actually has been.
Really?
No, I was looking over our podcasts, which go way back. And I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that we have had 42 or 43 podcasts
Okay, we're
together.
getting there.
So we're getting there, and it could be that it could be that we did a few that didn't get recorded or something like that. So we're right there, but I'm
Yeah.
terrible with dates.
Yeah.
It feels like forever. Feels like forever.
It
Right?
does. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's wonderful. It's my weekly check-in, my weekly kind of like Dharma calibration. And yeah, I'm just so grateful that we can do this.
Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade it for the world, Jack.
And so tonight is going to be really interesting because as as this show, we share the Dharma, right? We're kind of speaking from our experience with the Dharma and what we've, learned along the way, where we're struggling and whatnot. And tonight's topic is funny. It's very related to that. We're going to be talking about, how do we share the Dharma without without being obnoxious or kind of evangelical, and so I think this is going to be a nice kind of meta reflection for for us, but also really good as we're engaging with others in our lives who might not be practicing Dharma but could benefit from some of the just the skills and knowledge.
Yeah. So will we be practicing how to go door to door, knocking on doors and converting people to Vajrayana Buddhism?
Yeah, no, 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 thank you. No,
Okay.
thank you. I've had some not door knocking, but definitely where as a child who grew up at Christian school, we were very much encouraged to speak with our friends who had not met Jesus and as soon as possible introduce Jesus into their lives. And so this is a really good talk for me tonight because I tend to be a little bit on the evangelical
Me
side at
too. Me too.
times.
That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah.
I've had a few experiences recently that make me remember that. So
Yeah.
it's always good to remind ourselves of what we're up to here.
Great. Well, I'm excited to hear about some of them. And I'm sure that whatever may have been experienced in the moment as maybe a failure was actually, it's going to be a good growth opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Learning experiences abound.
Hmm. Good, good. Well, before we get into that, I would love to hear a little bit about what you're training in this last week and what's been happening.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've gotten a little bit off balance, which is always kind of an interesting territory. Feels so good when I think I'm balanced, right? And then lately I've been sort of veering off into nihilism, and
Interesting.
yeah, it has been interesting, and I attribute it to a few different things. Um, so my practice has been decently regular, but then I know this is probably I'm not the only one that this happens to, but my normal routine got thrown off quite dramatically. I had a visitor, an absolutely lovely visitor, come and hang out at my place. So we spent time like staying up late talking, and everything got kind of like everything work and stuff just got the whole schedule got thrown off. And I'm grateful for the opportunity and everything. It was nice, but at the same time, I did not make time for meditation. And
Yeah.
so at the same time, some people relatively close to me in my life, including my kids, had just some ordinary sort of samsaric experiences. you know, difficulty, upsetness, whatever you want to call it. And I found myself more affected by it than I normally, I think, do. You know, like normally I think I have a relatively healthy perspective on it, you know, and it doesn't kind of throw me off too much. I recognize like, okay, that's how that is. And, you know, whatever, like try to do the best to help them along. But in this case, like I felt myself sort of getting more attached to the the suckiness of samsara, you know, where I was like the thoughts about it, not the suckiness of it, but just sort of like ruminating about it, and then being sort of like, God, you know, even sort of like thinking about even contemplating Buddhist principles or philosophy, I noticed that there was this sort of filter on top of it. So like I was thinking quite a lot about reincarnation and whatnot, and I was just like, ugh, all of this. When's it? Come on, when's it gonna
Yeah,
end?
yeah, yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like this is,
totally.
I don't like this, and
Like,
oh, it
what have I
sucks.
gotten myself into? Like,
Yeah.
why this belief system where I just have to keep trying again and again.
Ex- okay, you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was like that, and you know, I'm really super grateful for Sangha. In particular, I had a really neat experience. I've befriended a Theravadan monk who lives in India, and it's very friendly, sort of like we exchange these. His name is Subo. So Subo, if you're listening, hi.
Hey.
Yeah. So Subo, he's very kind. He sends me very lovely messages on Facebook Messenger, right? And we just every day is pretty much little back and forth something. And you know, I must have let on that I wasn't feeling so hot, or that I was sort of like not in the best state. And it was like, you know, can I call you? And I was like,
Mm,
sure. And so we chatted for a little bit, and it was really beautiful, you know, like it was such a subtle shift that he offered, and it was nothing, you know, nothing new, but he listened to me, he smiled a little bit, and then he said, oh, happiness doesn't last forever. And then he waited, and he said, suffering doesn't last forever. That was
mm-hmm,
it. That was
mm-hmm.
it. That's all he said, you know. And I was like, oh, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Inhale,
I
exhale.
know, okay, right. It's sometimes it's these really simple truths that we need to hear, and it just sometimes it helps when it's a voice other than our own saying it. Like I was saying, you know, I was ruminating on it or contemplating a decent amount of Dharma or Buddhist philosophy or whatever you want to call it, and I had this sort of a
Yeah.
twisted, sort of distorted view of it, and it was just really this friendly sort of reminder from a friend, like, "Hey, this too shall pass." Right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
for everyone.
And excuse me, I'm having an allergic reaction, so I'm just gotta rub my
Uh-oh.
eye real quick. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
The allergies are so bad up here this year. And I get these like really just like burning eyes. So
Oh,
if I have to do that every once in a while, that's why.
okay. I didn't
Yeah.
move you to tears with my story, did
I'm, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, this is the story. This is
I was feeling touched there for a minute. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that Jack would feel so
I'm
moved.
really
But
you've made an impact. But no, I really feel that that sometimes it really just it takes that just real simple reminder, which
yeah,
also I think shows, Daniel, that your mind has been fertilized, right, with the Dharma. And no matter what, there's going to be these hard times, but your mind is like ready and willing to receive that back again.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that, Jack, and I see. I know that what you're saying is true. I have to say one more thing that
Yeah.
Subo mentioned. So I was feeling I had mentioned something. I was like, yeah, my meditation has fallen off for the last couple of days, and I can see that my mind is more perturbed than usual.
Hmm.
And then and it was really nice. He just said, oh, you're not alone.
Mm, hmm. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's right. That's right. There's
Yeah.
a lot of us really trying to establish and to maintain a consistent meditation practice. And I'm not alone in that. And that was actually really, I got to say, like, again, a simple, very simple reminder. And I was just like, right. Okay. I got this. I got no problem.
Mm. I
Yeah.
love that.
Isn't that
Yeah.
nice?
Yep. We're not alone. We're not alone. And we're not the only ones who are experiencing the wildness of our minds. Um, it's so funny because it's in my training, I'm every once in a while I'll try and work in a lam meditation. And lam is kind of like the stages of the path, so it covers some kind of like foundational topics and um just kind of like developing different qualities and seeing where our mind gets stuck and whatnot. And I listen to these recorded guided meditations by Tubten children. And I was listening to one the other day, and she was kind of listing all these, this kind of ways that the mind can get distorted. And I was thinking how often I reflect back on my own mind, and I think that it's such a problem, right? That like that I just really have a messed up mind or something. But ev- it, everything she's saying is that actually, no, this is quite universal. Like this is,
Right.
it's not just me. And in fact, to think of it as just me, like, oh gosh, how awful I am. I'm so horrible. Why can't I do this? That is just, the flip side of the coin of arrogance, right? To be so hard on myself, to think that I can like be perfect, a perfect meditator and a Buddha immediately, like, is just pride and arrogance.
That's a good reminder too, Jack. That's a good
Yeah.
reminder too.
It's like, yeah, I'm just, that I'm one of countless sentient beings who are, just getting through and trying to figure things out with, earnestly, right? But
Right.
we're gonna hit these snags, and so yeah.
Yeah, thankfully, when we get snagged, we don't, like if we are skillful, we recognize the snag and then we sort of like, do a little movement or something, get a little unsnagged instead of like ripping and tearing and causing more
Totally.
harm. So I think it gets better along the way, or I wouldn't say maybe easier, but I think we get more skillful, I hope.
I think so too. Yeah, that's the goal. Doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has your practice been? How's your life? What's up?
Life feels all right. Life feels all right. I have been noticing a shift in my perspective. I know the last couple months really I've been sharing, I've been just kind of down, and um my meditation's been very chaotic, and uh just feeling kind of the doldrums and whatnot. But a couple things have shifted. One is kind of more like physically related. I changed up my medications a little bit, so that feels different, and maybe like I have a wider range of emotional ability. So that's good. But two, I had a darshan with Lama last weekend. And I was kind of sharing some of this stuff about how my shamatha meditation, I'm wondering, like, man, do I need to like rehaul this, like how, like, do I need to like turn the Titanic around? Like, what's
Yeah,
going on,
yeah.
Um, and he was just very, very simply like, well, are you dealing with agitation, excitement, or laxity? It's such just so funny because it's like that is the basic of shamatha, that I've been dealing with from the beginning. So he reminded me, like it hasn't changed. And also there's no other strategy than just working with agitation, that excitement and lethargy and laxity, like, um, and so that was a really good reminder. There's like, okay, there's no magic bullet, right? Like I just really need to sit down and try and apply what I've learned, and also maybe like not feel so darn serious about it all the time. Like,
Yeah.
because I was just starting to feel like really frustrated and kind of mad. And, you know, another really helpful thing that he reminded me of is that it's like, well, you know, you have to kind of reflect on what kind of mind you're bringing to your practice. So am I bringing a mind that is just waiting to be done? Right? Like that's one for me a lot of times where I'm just like, okay, I've got to sit, you know, and oh, I got to cook dinner, and so I'm going to cook, or I'm going to meditate now and then cook, you know, like all the things, like getting things aligned so that everything gets done. And that kind of mind is such like, oh my gosh, it just zaps joy, right? Like
Totally.
I'm not in the moment. I'm not listening to, you know, I'm not like attentive to what's happening. So that was a really just very good, again, very simple reminder, to just go back to what I've already been learning, you know, and to also see like what can happen in this meditation, be open to what can happen here and throughout the meditation. So if I have a spurt where I'm really distracted, can I just say, all right, but here I am right now, you know?
Yeah.
And this is the experience of distraction, and you know, just really like not let myself get pulled by that frustration or anger that I feel about myself. So yeah, I feel like that has really shifted my practice. And then as far as like, I don't know, my everyday life, um I feel like I'm having a little bit more acceptance around where I'm at. You know, I've got a year left in school. You know, I work at this job where it's hard for me to get out there, and it feels, you know, tiring every day. It's a long day. But it really just, I felt kind of rejuvenated, going to work today, and just saying, you know what, this is where I'm at. And these people in front of me are amazing people. I want to engage with them. I want to be here. And so yeah, my perspective has just shifted a little bit, and I'm still anxious and anxious and frustrated a lot of the times, but it doesn't feel like I'm fighting myself all the time, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mindfully anxious, mindfully frustrated.
Exactly. Yeah. Mindfully, all of those things. And then
Yeah.
noticing that, you know, they shift.
Yep.
They
Yeah.
shift all day, every
Absolutely.
day.
So do you think like acceptance is quite powerful, right? Like we've talked about it quite a lot on this show, including like when we were talking about forgiveness and whatnot, that it's oftentimes the first step towards regaining balance or some form of healing.
Mm.
And do you, to what do you attribute the acceptance? Like was it just sort of like what, like how did you get there?
A good question. You know, I think it's kind of a combination of all the things that I've talked about already, you know, with the kind of changes in physical state, as well as, you know, my approach to my training, my practice. I always notice a correlation with what's happening in my meditation to how I'm engaging with my life, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm, you know, just stressed out about getting through the meditation, I'm also stressed out about getting through the workday, right? Like there's just the mind, that's the
Yeah.
mind that I'm experiencing, you
Yeah.
know? And
Right.
so if I approach my meditation differently, which is what, you know, I've been doing in the last few days of like, let's see what happens here, you know? Let me
It,
be curious,
yeah,
you know?
it's kind of neat, right? How the gentle reminders, the very simple reminders, like you received in Darshan with Lama, how that then affects your practice, and then how your practice affects your life, right?
Yeah,
So it's magical.
it is magical. And yeah, it's that magic of, you know, directly applying
Right,
through like
right.
direct action in your life. And yeah, it's amazing that we can do it. And it just keeps on proving to me that it works.
Yeah,
Even when I'm annoyed or like, you know, like like you, like that experience of being, thinking about like, oh, reincarnation, or like,
Yeah.
oh, karma,
Oh,
like
I
where
know. I read this. The other day. I was at the temple and I read this poem in the Tara shrine room. And there's a line in there. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up. I took a picture of it. I'll just tell you yeah, here we go. There's a line in there that really got to me.
uh,
It says, uh, "I can't control my body or my mind, and karma appears indifferent to my designs." And I was like,
wow.
right, yeah, that's where I was like, yep. So,
Yeah,
karma appears indifferent to my designs, and I was like, yeah, yeah. Oh,
totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's like that, we can we can live our lives causing harm to ourselves and others, and just, keep over and over saying, but I can't help it. This is just
right.
who I am. Like, I'm just like an angry, frustrated person. Like, I can't help it. I'm sorry, but now we can't do that anymore.
No,
We've
no, we
got some
can't.
awareness that, like, oh, I'm responsible for what I do and how that affects my life in the future.
Yeah. My brother was saying something to this effect this morning, and I said, "Yeah, do you ever wish that you could get plugged back into the matrix?"
Mm.
And he said, he goes, "I think my adapter's broken. It wouldn't
Oh,
work. It wouldn't work. I wouldn't be able to hook up to it again."
yeah, no, no. Once you see something,
Yeah,
it's there. You can't take it away.
right.
Yeah,
Well, what do you think, Jack? Should we do a little Lojong slogan to get the
let's
show
do some
kicked off
slogans.
there?
Yeah, let's do
Okay,
it.
all right. Let me share my screen.
And yeah, it seems like my eyeball has gotten better, so that's good. Excellent.
Nice, excellent. All
Weird little
right.
allergy attack.
I hate when
I
that
felt it
happens.
coming on too. Yeah.
When
Okay.
your eyes get all itchy and then you start
Yeah, I was
crying.
trying to tell my eyeball, don't, it's
Oh,
okay. It's okay.
don't force it.
Okay.
You can't force it away.
Yeah, no. Okay, number 52. Avoid misunderstandings. Okay, that seems hard. But I'm going to read this paragraph here, and I'm curious what Choyam Trungpa said from Training the Mind and Cultivating Loving Kindness. There are 6 things that you may twist or misinterpret in your practice: patience, yearning, excitement, compassion, priorities, and joy. It is a misinterpretation of patience to be patient about everything in your life but the practice of Dharma. Misinterpreted yearning is to foster yearning for pleasure and wealth, but not to encourage the yearning to practice Dharma thoroughly and properly. Misinterpreted excitement is to get excited by wealth and entertainment, but not to be excited by the study of Dharma. It is twisted compassion to be compassionate to those who endure hardships in order to practice Dharma, but to be unconcerned and uncompassionate to those who do evil. Twisted priorities means to work diligently out of self-interest at that which benefits you in the world, but not to practice Dharma. Twisted joy is to be happy when sorrow afflicts your enemies, but not to rejoice in virtue and in the joy of transcending samsara. You should absolutely and completely stop all 6 of these misinterpretations.
Mm.
All right.
Mm.
So this is that way that we can do that spiritual bypassing, or kind of spiritual materialism, where we use the Dharma, we kind of twist it just a little bit, so that we can get what we want out of the world and out of people. It's so easy to do.
It's almost as if it's our habit pattern to stay or be stuck in these misunderstandings.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I can't help. I actually have on my desk here. I printed out because like I was saying before, like I think I mentioned it. I like to start my day off with the random Lojong slogan generator. And I got one that I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna need to like sit with that a bit. I can't."
Mm.
I was like, and so I printed it out, and I happen to have it on my desk. I don't know if it'll. You see it, or is
Mm.
it? It's backlit up?
Mm-hmm. I can see it. Yep.
It says 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 seeds of virtue. And basically, I think that my sense is that that one actually feels sort of intimately tied into what we just read from Trungpa Rinpoche, which is this, that we can transform these objects or these poisons or whatever. We can transform them into something that is beneficial, that is good, right? So like in the sense of avoiding the misunderstandings, right? We have this natural tendency, for example, to be um, perhaps fostering yearning for pleasure and wealth, right? That's a sort of a normal thing to do. And yet it's a misunderstanding, it's a little twisted. And so we
Mhm.
can transform that, and by using that same energy and switching it over into yearning for, practicing Dharma, for example, then then we can get something that's positive out of what would otherwise be causing suffering. Anyway, I couldn't help while you were reading it. I was like, oh, these two are related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. And I like that about Lojong, that there's like it's kind of a package deal. So it's really good to practice every day. Um, but yeah, I think this is just a really good, as I'm going about my day, can I check in with my motivation? What am I doing this for? Why do I feel this way about something? Is it because I'm getting what I want out of the situation, which is not inherently bad. Like it's not bad to like get a promotion at work or whatever, things like that. But is it just so that I can like feel good about myself and like kind of self-aggrandizement, I'm getting a big head and whatnot? Or is it because, oh, if I get a promotion at work, I'm going to be able to be more effective at supporting people, so we want to find like, am I being altruistic in my motivation?
Yeah,
um
I I think that phrase that you used about checking in on my motivation, and the encouragement to avoid misunderstandings, I think these are sort of also intimately tied into our topic tonight.
I think so too. And with that, should we get to the topic?
Yeah, I just think it's so cool how it all ties together.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just pressing a
um
random button on the website there and up comes something so meaningful.
mhm. Yeah, so you know I'm glad that we picked this topic tonight because I've been thinking about this, at my work, sharing the Dharma. How do I do that at work in a way that feels appropriate, working in mental health, with my family, just seeing how many afflictions arise and just feeling like, oh, I could jump in there, right? I've got some antidotes for you, right?
Oh,
And so I've been thinking about it. And I'm just glad because I feel like we're gonna generate some interesting ideas.
yeah,
Yeah.
what you said right there, just this sort of feeling of like, oh wow, I can see so clearly why things aren't working out the way you want. I've got this thing for you, right? Let me,
Yeah.
like that's the tendency that certainly
Right.
on my end, and I find it fascinating, like you mentioned, yeah, there's so many people, both, I'd say both people who are perhaps practitioners as well as non-practitioners, right?
Sure.
This
Sure.
stuff shows up. And I think it's interesting. I've been contemplating quite a lot. I was reading this book by Chogyam Trungpa, or listening to it, and in it he said something that I thought was quite interesting. He said, a lot of people avoid talking to their family members and especially their parents about their relationship to the Dharma, and they will say, like he basically was like, they minimize it somehow, like, yes. And we've talked about this before,
Oh
right? Like,
yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that that's how I do it as well. I don't want to get into it. It's too big. It's too personal. It's too whatever, inflammatory or something, right? And so I'm sort of like, I'll just sort of, and so it's fascinating to me how on the one hand, for example, when I'm talking to my mom about these things and I want to sort of offer up some kind of dharma or share the dharma with her, then I can be a lot I'm not going to say skillful. That's not the right word, but I can be a little less direct, right? I can sort of
Mm.
you know, like I might sort of riff off of her religious beliefs or something,
Totally. Yeah.
right? And not really talk about things like clearly or straightforwardly. Whereas when I'm talking to somebody really close to me who knows about my beliefs and practices, then I'm a bit more like, you know, like, let me tell you what,
Mm,
right? So yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
and I don't think either approach is really right. You know, I brought this up with Lama a few darshans ago, where I was like, you know, what's the best way for me to teach? You know, like I notice, for example, my like I want to like help my kids, right? And like whenever things come up, and I want to just like tell them what they need to do, right, in order to solve all their problems, just like I've solved all my problems.
Right. 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 Exactly.
Talk about delusion, right? Um, and he said something that really stuck with me. He quoted Saint Francis of Assisi, and he said, "Preach the gospel at all times. Use words only when necessary."
Mm,
And then he let me reflect on that for a minute. Like, what the
mm,
heck does that mean? Right?
mm-hmm,
Like, I think I get it now, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
I gotta like live by example. And, you know, it's hard to sort of accept that really this keeps coming back to us in our practice about being diligent, right? Continuing on the path ourselves, and that, you know, like we'll light our own way perhaps, and maybe along the way we can shed some light for others, but it's not in,
Right.
you know, like we have to continually check in on our motivation. I mean, our motivation in this practice is not just to benefit ourselves, right? It is to
Right.
benefit all beings, right? That's why we're doing this, or it's why we're
Right.
on this path. But I think that there's a misunderstanding sometimes, at least on my end, of how to benefit other people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just like we've been sort of indicating tonight already, is that it's actually quite simple. Keep doing your practice, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
keep working at it, and when we do that, you know, then of course, you know, other people sort of, they sense it, they see it, there's something a little bit different about you, at least
Right.
different compared to previous you, right? And so then there's, you know, some curiosity perhaps or whatever around it. And I've noticed that in my life, like I notice people sort of like, I don't know, appearing to want to know more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't all sometimes I think I do a pretty good job, but in other cases, man, I get too excited or something, and I'm like, let me tell you what, and then all of a sudden I get pushback, you
Right.
know?
Right. And that's, I mean, I think that's a very human experience. And you know, not just in sharing the Dharma, but you know, I work with people in mental health. And the moment I start to tell people what they should do, that's when they're out, right? You know, when I come in with my agenda, like here's, you know, we're going to go over this today, and you know, I've got all these different coping strategies that have worked for me, you know,
That's right.
that's when people are, yeah, no.
Yeah,
And
Jack, why do we do it? Why is, I mean, I do it too. So like
why do we push back
yeah, what is,
against someone? I
yeah,
mean, I think everyone has to feel their own agency. And also, it's ineffective, right, to just learn um, by, well, not always, right, because we learn by hearing. But the most effective type of learning is when we can come to that realization ourselves. And it's always going to be in relationship with someone, right? Because that's, we learn from people, we learn from not just what they say, but what they do, like we've been saying, but also the way that a person can talk to us and be in relationship with us can be in a way that allows our own knowledge to come out. And I think that's really what, like, kind of there's this, you know, movement in medical and kind of psychiatry worlds of being trauma informed. And you know, it comes out of the idea that, you know, people who have experienced some kind of trauma, which we're in samsara, so we're experiencing many, you know, small and large traumas all the time. So we can just assume that everyone's traumatized, right? Um, but people who have experienced trauma really need to feel their own agency again. They need to feel empowered. And so if we're just hearing like, oh, okay, yeah, blah, 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 this is what I should do, we're not gonna feel as motivated to do it. But if it's coming from us, like, oh, that makes sense. Like, okay, what you're saying makes sense to me. Then we're more likely to apply it. Um, and I think, it's really, so I've been working with that. Like, okay, I'm gonna try, I really just want to try and listen where people are at. And if they want to hear about what I've been doing with the Dharma, and how it's affected my life, wonderful. Um, and then another piece of that is remembering too that everyone is on their own journey. So everyone has their kind of their own path. And if I'm trying to control them on that path, they're not going to see it as their own. They're going to see it as someone trying to control it. And that's not agency. That doesn't feel good. And also, I don't have control over anyone.
Them.
And we're traumatizing them. And so, and also, to apply a Dharma principle, like everyone has their own karma, right? And so I can certainly be in relationship with someone and try and reflect what I have learned in the Dharma and be a mirror for someone, right? But ultimately, I don't have agency over what they end up doing. So if I can remind myself of that, there's less of a intensity on my side for getting something across, right? Because I just sometimes I have this thing like, oh, I have to make sure this person knows what I'm saying, knows what I'm talking about. It feels really urgent. And while it's really important, that I work on being a good communicator, I don't like, I'm not in control of their life and what they decide to do with any information or conversation,
Right.
Which is so frustrating.
Yeah, totally. But given that you're not in control of their life, whether they're a patient or a child or a partner or whatever, remembering that and remembering that we want to actually empower them, right, to work things out on their own, that helps to remove some of our sort of egoic tendency to be attached to the outcome of whatever we're up to. So like on my end, what I notice is that I have this, so it's this misunderstanding, right? Where I'm like, I really do feel like I want to relieve them of their suffering. So someone is expressing the way that they're suffering or the way they're stressed or whatever you want to call it. And I think I'm like, oh, I get it. And I think I want to go the direct route of just like, here's what you need, right? But it's presumptuous on my end, right? And it's still just my limited view. I don't actually understand. And truthfully, I don't even I don't understand and have a difficult enough time applying even the simplest basics of Dharma, right? So I'm not a teacher, right? But I have a teacher, and I've learned along the way some things, and there's a way for me to communicate, maybe sharing from my own experience and from my own heart about what's been helpful to me, but not in this way of, not with the intention. This is what you said, check in with my motivation, right? If I can feel the difference when I'm just glowing because I'm like, I had something similar or whatever, and this is how I got relieved, and I'm just really sharing it because I'm care and I really enjoyed that, or like I feel the relief myself. I can sense the difference between that and when I'm like, and this is going to help you.
Right. Totally. Yeah. We never like to feel like we're being told what to do, right? But hearing, that empathy, right? That like, oh my gosh, I've been there too. I'm so sorry. Yeah, this sucks, right? That is so much more approachable. It makes so much more sense. And And yeah, that sharing from personal experience, I think you're totally right that it just makes so much more sense at this part of our journey, like I certainly don't have like grand realizations of emptiness and whatnot. I'm barely scraping the surface of any of the basics, right? So just speaking from that personal experience is just so valuable. um
Well, and and assuming that we do know something, like actually being like, well, I do know something about emptiness, and I do know something about what non-self means, and whatever. I have some understanding of this, and then trying to impart that unskillfully to another person as sort of a representative of Buddhism. Like if you know you're a Buddhist and they know that you're talking to them about Buddhist ideas, concepts, beliefs, whatever, and if we do a poor job of it, right, we can harm them.
Totally,
Right? Talk
yeah,
about bad karma, right? Like,
totally, yeah, yeah,
like if we speak in the wrong way, and sort of assume the role of a teacher with improperly, then I think that like that can really be harmful to the other person as well, because they might be like, oh, like that. Like first of all, if we're not living it, if we're not actually practicing it and like walking the walk, they'll see through that. And then if we do a bad job of explaining it based upon misunderstandings, then of course they might get the wrong idea. And
yeah,
so
totally. We need to
that would
be cautious.
have to be really cautious. And I think that that's where like it's the one thing that I have found kind of helpful along the way when talking to people, where I'm trying, like talking to my mom specifically,
Hmm.
but other people as well, where I'm sort of like not keen on sharing my like religious beliefs, if you will, like where I'm just sort of like I'm listening and I'm like, ooh, there's some dharma that would be helpful to this discussion. What I've noticed is that when I genuinely listen and I suggest something sort of like what my friend Subo did for me, like, oh yeah, this too shall pass. It's impermanent.
Yeah.
Notice, no, hey, notice like you're really stuck, like you're whatever, you're upset right now because of X, Y, and Z, and you think X, Y, and Z is always going to be that way. But just
Right,
notice how it wasn't that way before, and just think about everything else. It's not going to be that way in a while. And just
right,
notice your own experience, right? And not in some kind of like me telling you how it is, but just like, yeah, just like this will pass too, right? Like
yeah,
that kind of an empathetic response that still is sharing Dharma, but it's not trying to like preach the Dharma. It's not trying to like convert
right,
to them. It's really
right. Yes, we don't
sharing.
need to convert people.
No,
We're not
no,
converters. Yeah.
no.
And I think so many wonderful teachers, the Dalai Lama, he's really big on these kind of secular ethics, right? So like and who was our friend teacher who came and he taught on secular Buddhism, and he shared, someone at some point brought up like, okay, so people just need to know like Buddha Dharma Sangha, and he was like, no, like people do not need to know Buddha Dharma Sangha to live a good life. Like, and but can they live compassionately? Can they live generously and joyfully and engaged and aware? Yes, you
Yeah,
can be all those things and not have taken refuge in
that's
the
right.
Dharma, right?
Right.
And so that like was so inspiring to me, because it's like, oh yeah, I don't need to have someone start going to a temple or start meditating, like,
No,
but what, even just bringing some sense of compassion, love, joy, awareness, that will be of benefit, right? That will be of
absolutely.
so
Oh
much
my God.
benefit to people's lives and the lives of the people around them. And that's what we're trying to do.
Exactly that, and if we have that compassion, then we're going to be, when we're engaged with someone, we'll be practicing active listening, right? Like really paying attention to them. And like you said, they don't have to do anything, right? They don't have to start meditating, for example. That's the big one for me, right? I'll give you an
Mm,
example. I
sure,
was
yeah,
talking to
yeah.
somebody, I was talking to somebody the other day who has suffered me along my journey, if, like all of my misunderstandings, they've been witness to them all, to the whole thing, and
Yeah.
are relatively skeptical. Like, I think on the one hand, they've expressed, they're like, yeah, I see the benefit to you. You're definitely a changed person, and that's good. But they don't really like the preachy me,
They
and
can feel it. They feel
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah, I used to be a Jehovah's Witness, right? So like that's where the door knocking comment came, right?
totally.
Really trying to convert everybody possible because we know the truth, right? So like that's still there, and I like, man, I got to tell you, so I was having this discussion, and I was like, I was in a totally good space, and I knew, since I'm aware of this, I was like, I'm not gonna, mm-mm, I'm I'm not saying, I'm not going anywhere with this, right? Like,
Mm.
so they were talking about how they were having difficulty making some major life decisions, right? There was just so many things that they could possibly do, and they didn't know which one was right. And if they did this, then they couldn't do that. This kind of a conversation. And in my mind, I was like, I had these like, I was listening, and I was like, don't you can I could tell, I could
Don't
see
do it. Don't do it.
it, like, so on the one hand, I'm trying to practice, active listening, but at the same time, I'm not deferring judgment, right? Like I'm thinking about, I'm like, oh, but I know, right? I know the answer, right? Like, and so, but because I could see this all kind of playing out, I was like, well, all right, yeah, are like, maybe it would be helpful to be somewhat objective about it by like putting it out like in list form, like writing it all out. And so I thought, well, maybe if I speak on sort of the relative level and not some kind of ultimate level, and I don't encourage anything, just some list writing, something like that. And they were like, I'm a list writer. I'm a list maker. I have done this a million times, right?
Mm.
You think I haven't written, a bunch of different lists about this? Of course I have. And then I was like, oh, right. Yeah. Okay. That's a good point. And then I was like, but it's still murky, right? And then they're like, yeah, yeah. And I was like, well, you know what I do?
Uh-huh.
I tried to, and I was trying to phrase it in this very, I was like, well, I'm not really suggesting that you have to meditate or anything, but there are these ways to still the mind, you know. And man, oh, she knew exactly where I was. She could
Yeah.
smell me a mile away, right? And you should have seen like what went from sort of just a normal sort of friendly conversation. I could see the twist in her face like almost immediately, where it was like, oh, look at him. He thinks he knows something. I was depriving her of her agency, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
You know, and definitely had already, formed some kind of judgment and opinion. And when I reflected on it later, I realized that the way that I was wrong was twofold. Which was, on the one hand, I was like, oh, maybe something on the relative level, or maybe, okay, fine, something a little bit more like Buddhisty, maybe some meditation. She wasn't actually asking for my advice,
Yeah.
and that was the part I missed,
Yeah.
right? Like that sometimes not like the listening part is
Hmm.
sufficient. Maybe a little bit of empathizing, like, oh yeah, I've been there
Right.
before, right?
Right.
But not suggesting a path forward, because that wasn't actually what was being requested. And
Right.
I think it's funny. There was somebody, I came across something on Reddit. It was like this subreddit, and it was this funny comment where somebody said, if they ask for Buddhist advice, give Buddhist advice. If they don't, keep your trap shut.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's sage advice.
That
That's
is.
really good. I should learn to keep my trap shut a little bit more, right? Open my ears
Yeah.
a bit more, and listen more like, I think often, like I said, I think I've made some progress with the listening stuff. I really do. But those old tendencies are still
Oh
there.
yeah. Yeah, it is funny, those patterns that continue to come up and up and up. And yeah, there I have the tendency to get really frustrated with myself when I notice those patterns, like, gosh, why am I doing that again? Like, I know that that doesn't work, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we have to be gentle with ourselves. We've um especially, we live in a culture that is, sometimes so based on coercion, like just trying to convince people of our opinions, and that our opinions are right, that, and then, yeah, just being raised trying to convert people. Um, these are long entrenched patterns, and I have to remind myself that, like, okay, yeah, this is taking some real effort, right effort, um, to kind of, rehaul the way that I see people, that I am not above people, like I am not, um, I can't control people. I'm not lording over people. I am a peer, I am within this messy world of samsara. And all I can do is just be there next to someone. And yeah, we're so lucky to have this information, this knowledge, this Dharma that we're training in, and to be able to, yeah, share that. But again, it's so much just about, like, how am I doing it? Not what the language that I'm getting across, but how am I, how am I sharing the Dharma?
That's right. When you think about your own experience, at least when I think about mine and what I think I know about yours and what I've heard about other people's experiences about how they came to the Dharma, I don't think that I've heard that anybody was compelled, to do this by somebody else and their persuasive arguments.
Right. Yeah, no, I certainly wasn't.
No.
I definitely, once I was kind of ripe for, like, okay, I've been skirting around the temple, because I, came with my mental health problems and all that stuff. And I was able to warm up, right? Like I was ripening. I was a little berry, that was all firm and hard. And then, like, friendship starts to ripen and whatnot. I love extended metaphors. I'm not going to get into one right now, but yeah, that, like, when I was right, then, then friends could kind of come in and say, like, here, check out this article, or, like, come to this practice on Saturday. You're going to hear more about this particular topic, right? And then I was able to be like, okay, yeah, I'm ready, right? But trying to push someone beyond their current, like, stage of readiness, we're never going to ripen that berry, right? It's just not going to be forced into ripening.
No can do, no can do. Although you did bring something up that I kind of am hoping that we can touch on here towards the end of this conversation, which is um, offering resources to people.
Mm.
So uh, I've noticed that a lot of times people that know that I'm sort of like whatever, they know something about me being Buddhist. They will ask me questions about things, like either about meditation or, like, hey, how can I learn more about Buddhism? And I'm kind of curious, what resources what do you typically, when somebody's like, I don't know, either asking you about Buddhism or about meditation or about improving their lives in such a way that you think that the Dharma would be helpful to them. What do you point people to?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, what I've done is I just share the things that I started looking into, that were, they were approachable, yet kind of laid out the path, in very general, and digestible terms. And I think Pema Chodron does a great job of doing that. When things fall apart, it's kind of like a classic one, especially for people, who are just like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like, things are just effed. And I need something, like that feels like kind of a lifeline, and Starting Where You Are by Pema Chodron is another one, That was actually the first book that I borrowed from the temple. So I love those ones. And Tara Brach, I think, was kind of like, in kind of like the yeah, I guess just less Buddhist intensive mindfulness, to kind of like be a little bit get in the door, because I really needed a lot of self-compassion, and she talks a lot about self-compassion.
She's one of my favorites to recommend as well for the same reason, where I'm, like if you want something, you're not, you're not necessarily into exploring Buddhism, but you could use a little bit of help. I like to recommend her stuff as well. It's pretty powerful. I actually it's fascinating to me how some of this stuff is all intertwined many years ago, like long time ago. My brother was practicing psychology, and he's not a Buddhist in any way, shape, or form. And he sent me, we were talking one day, he goes, "You got to get this book. You have to. It's a form of psychotherapy called Acceptance and Commitment Therapy."
Nice.
By Tara Brach.
Nice.
And so it's funny because I had her book for many years, and then when I started getting more involved in Buddhism, then I heard a lot more from her, and then I'm like, oh
yes.
yeah, exactly. I have another one that I'm similar in the sense that I like to just like sort of point out things that like I found helpful in the beginning. And somebody who helped me quite a lot was there's this podcast by Noah Rasheta. It's called Secular Buddhism Podcast. I used to listen to that all the time because I wasn't ready for anything religious, and boy, was that helpful.
Yeah. I think, anything, Thich Nhat Hanh, of course, is another one. Because, Thich Nhat Hanh, like, of course, he speaks Dharma so gorgeously. And he can also make it very relatable to, everyday kind of non-Buddhist secular folks. So always Thich Nhat Hanh.
Always. I'm so glad that you mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh, because you're absolutely right. Because I don't care who you are, you're going to be moved by his words.
Yeah.
There's no, I don't think I've ever, like, I don't know. And there's this poem. I know that I think we talked about it before. Call Me by My Names.
Oh yeah.
And that one, like it moves me to tears sometimes just even thinking about it. Right. It's such a powerful thing. I've shared it with quite a few people, and every time people are just like it takes their breath away. Like, oh my gosh, right.
For sure. Yeah, and that I love that we're ending on this, actually, because I feel like if you don't know what to do, rely on teachers, right? Rely on teachers who know more than you.
That's where we learned it.
Exactly. Yeah. And at the temple too, at Lions Roar, for folks who are listening and maybe haven't had a chance to go there are some really cool texts to not like in our library, but also things that our teacher has written too, things about meditation and whatnot. So super recommend checking those out if you're interested.
Along the same line, Jac, if you can't make it to the temple and you're interested, there are a lot of Dharma talks on the YouTube channel, the Lions Roar Dharma Center YouTube channel, and those can be quite helpful.
Yeah, for sure. It's a treasure trove. That's really cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Daniel, I love that, even though we can't push people, which is like sometimes I wish that we could, and even if they might, like disagree with us, in some way, we can still show up. We can be consistent and compassionate, transparent. And then, if wanted, we can non-coercively provide information, right?
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Easy enough, right?
Yeah, no, these are all really good reminders, and I'm grateful that you were willing to explore the subject with me. I probably need a reminder again. I'm definitely gonna.
I'm grateful too, Daniel. And yeah, it's always a pleasure being here Tuesday night. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We love y'all and look forward to next week.
All right. Bye, everybody. Bye, Jack. Thank you so much.
Bye, Daniel. Thanks, friend.
Bye.